Good day to everyone. And today we have the special edition, very first edition of our new YouTube show where we review pitch decks of the startups. You know, as a founder, that it is crazy hard to make your own pitch deck because you are biased, you are in love with your product, you are in love with your team, and it's very difficult for you, founders, to understand and have an independent view on how attractive your deck is for investors. If you want your pitch deck to be reviewed, go to InnMind, click the button in your startup profile, review my pitch deck. Today, we have amazing guests and partners. Arcanum Ventures, that is a boutique venture studio that is both investing in the startups, consulting startups in token economy, in fundraising, in business modeling, revenue generation, and many, many other important aspects of your business. Hi, Sasha and Carmelo.
Hey, how's it going, Ellie? Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thanks.
Let's do it. ManaQI Holdings by the founder Adaya Fonseca. I hope I am not mistaken with the pronunciation. We just received the request for the pitch deck review from InnMind platform. ManaQI revolutionizes content production, distribution, and monetization for creators. The first slide.
The funny thing is, I'm not really sure how to pronounce that. Like, is it ManaQI or ManaQI, ManaQi?
Well, probably mana chi because mana and chi are both like, you know, these sort of mana and yoga and qigong sort of feel. At least both of those words, that's what they have in common. I don't know what the antidote means though.
Well, I think that antidote is to be creative here, yeah, and it is really not relevant, guys, and not a bit confusing because Manaki or Manachi revolutionizes content production, distribution, and monetization for creators.
Keep it simple as much as possible.
Fully agree here. And maybe the last sentence regarding this slide is revolutionizes content production, distribution, and monetization for creators. These buzzwords, revolutionize, disrupt. I would not say it's a red flag for investor, but we all got tired of this. Every second startup, imagine, and we review like tens of pitch decks per day. Mention is something like revolutionizing, disrupting, etc. So remove these buzzwords and better stick to the point what you are doing. I think you could introduce your project in one sentence here in a more clear and understandable way.
100% agree with that.
Yeah. And that's like one of the funnest things to do, right? Marketing wise, is take your entire company and put it into like a 7-word sentence. Like, how do you communicate that? If you can do that well, then you're already, on the good path.
Let's go to the next slide. The problem.
Okay, so ticket market is dominated. So it looks like they're addressing event ticketing, which is a great application for blockchain, and also very, let's say, inequitable, like not so great for monetization for artists, teams, venues, etc. Like we all know the issues around Ticketmaster, so that's always a great idea. But again, I think like on the investor side, we're starting to see a lot of event ticketing solutions come to market. And so some of these problem justification slides, when we see these numbers here, like there's 5 billion available market share to gain, like that's not as accurate as it may be, considering they are already competing in a space with many others potentially.
Don't you think this slide to be confusing? Because in the first sentence, we see ticket market is dominated by. So, Sasha, you presumed that it's about ticketing. But then when I see the chart, I see Apple Music, I see Spotify, Amazon. It has nothing to do with ticketing platforms. It is actually about streaming, right? This creates a bit confusion of what this startup is targeting as a core problem. Is it the ticketing problem? Is it the problem of getting paid for your live streams or whatever else?
Yeah, that's a great.
I was going to say that I think Sasha and I have seen like several pitch decks like this, like maybe more. The ironic thing is a catch 22. Like I think this needs to be solved more than almost any problem. And there's been so many projects that come with the same first slides. They say, we want to fix this. We want to, help monetize and make it more equity for streamers and artists and all that. And it sounds amazing in theory, But I think going back to what you said, the ticket and the kind of lack of focus, they're thinking big picture, like we want to change all of this, which is great. But I think I sort of lose steam in the pitch decks when we're reviewing them. When I see this right away, that they have all these problems that I want to solve. So it's a good point. Like the ticketing thing is definitely a little bit. It kind of distracts you away from the main point right away.
Yeah, Carmelo's right. Like I think I completely missed it on this one. It's way more than just ticketing. And so I took a quick look. I saw a few buzzwords. This just goes to show, like, for some people that look at a lot of pitch decks, they might completely miss the point. Dumb it down for those idiots like myself.
For all founders that are watching us now, the core thing is to make it as understandable as possible, as simple as possible. I hate referring to pitch decks of big unicorns like Airbnb or whatever, but once you check their early pitch decks, it is primitively simple. So you will never find complicated stuff there. Try to be more simple, guys. Let's go to the next slide.
Interesting. So a lot of these things are pretty common across like what we see Web 2, Web 3. And it just revolved around decentralization, right? So it sounds like they're trying to pursue a more decentralized avenue for content creation and monetization. I see several bullet points that have a lot of the same words across the board, right? And so one of the things to do here is like, this is a busy slide. Maybe cut down on the busyness, cut down on the wordiness, use like 2 or 3 different bullet points on each side, the major ones. The point, again, like you're probably going to hear this a lot from me and Carmelo in this series. The point is not to list everything possible to try and communicate everything you possibly can in a pitch deck. The point is to get into a room with the investor. You want to create just a little bit of intrigue that's going to catch their attention and then get them into a conversation where then you can speak face to face, because you have way more impact having a conversation face to face about what you're doing versus just having someone read a pitch deck.
Guys, I just understood how important it is what we are doing right now. I mean, as a founder, I just had an exercise of building our own deck for InnMind and receiving feedback from investors that it is too wordy. And as a founder, I'm looking at our deck and I do not know what words can I cut off because they are all so important. But now, looking from investor perspective at this deck, I understand, and I hope founders will not get pissed off, but will appreciate this feedback that actually everything here can be removed, because please understand whom you are pitching. If you are pitching to Web3 or crypto VC, you do not need to prove them how advantageous it is Web3 versus Web2. So it's useless content actually that does not add any value for your fundraising if you are pitching to crypto or Web3 VC. This slide does not give any substance explaining why your project is special and how it can compete with other Web3 projects targeting similar problems. So I suggest just to remove this slide.
And then just on one small note, like I'm a stickler for formatting because while it might not be the most important thing for conveying information, it does show attention to detail for me, at least. I don't know if other investors think like I do, but just seeing the where we are and the where we're going, like how it fits outside of the yellow box or how close the logo in the bottom right corner is to the text, like small little things that kind of make me feel like you could have went through this a few more times, a few more iterations, and like put it in a more presentable state so that you can be proud to give this to people.
Yeah, just formatting in general, I think. It doesn't have to be fancy, but it just has to make sense and it has to feel easy.
Going to the next slide.
Oh no. What I do know is that opportunity is my new favorite word, and I'm going to start using it every possible chance I can get.
Yeah, that's another like attention to detail thing right there. Like I'm very cognizant of the fact that most of the teams that we speak to, maybe they're not native English speakers. So it's easy for me as a native English speaker to say or make fun of little mistakes like that. But it's more about the paying attention to details. Like, there's ample software out there. There's ChatGPT. There's everything. There's the internet out there to teach you. Like you have to run through this, or maybe even send it to somebody and double check or triple check before you send it out, because like really one misspelling like that can be a deal breaker with VCs.
Honestly, I don't find any excuse for it. there's a lot of benefit of the doubt, blah, blah, blah. Unacceptable in my mind. I'm just going to set the line, black and white, unacceptable. This is something that you have to figure out. A title, a title of the slide is huge.
Fully agree here. And we see that a lot, actually, especially in the early stage startups when they just build their deck and start sending it to investors. So, guys, advice here, everyone can make a typo, but before sending it to actual investors or uploading it to your startup profile that is publicly accessible by VC investors, please at least send it through your team, send it to fellow entrepreneurs. You get blind, you do not see these typos since you build this deck, but other people immediately pay attention, and it really ruins the whole story. Guys, I'm very curious to hear what you say about these typical bubbles, Tom, Sam, Som, 100 billion market size. How do you feel about that?
The one that really stood out to me is the SAM. They want to target 20% of all target creators in 180 days, if I'm reading that correctly. So that is very ambitious. And we were having a conversation, I think, earlier this morning about, accurate projections. Like, you want to be really conservative because you need to leave yourself some room to outpace your own projections. You don't want to fall short every time. And, good things take time. It takes 5, 6, 7 years to become a major social media platform or streaming platform. You're not going to do it overnight just because Web3 is flashy.
If you're putting numbers on a pitch deck, be prepared to back them up and get the difficult questions. A lot of investors are not stupid. They see something like this, they're going to ask, like, where did that number come from? How'd you calculate that? And if you start to BS them, or you show them any hint of, like, maybe you've embellished this metric, that could be the end of that conversation as far as securing funding. So, it's always good to be realistic and always good to show that you've actually done the research and you've put some realistic numbers on paper, because they're not going to ask this question most likely to say, like, okay, is the opportunity really 100 billion? Wow, you guys can gain 5 billion. Most likely, the more seasoned investors are going to ask this question to understand what was your thought process in planning and researching and executing here, to see if you have the tools that it takes to go to market with this. And so it's more of like a psychological game versus like, wow, this number blows my mind, because they're trying to measure you up as a human being, as a founder, as someone that can get stuff done.
So just to summarize, this slide is definitely not good to go to show to investors. You need to reconsider both numbers. What do you identify as target creators audience? What do you understand by Tam Sam Som? What do you refer to actually? Is it 2023 or is it forecast by 2030? This is the slide about solution.
Nice images.
I'm confused by the tiny little text there. It's like abnormally small compared to everything else.
Revolutionize the creator economy. Again, a useless sentence that does not bring any value. Then customizable, brandable networks and channels controlled by creators. Production, distribution, and monetization.
We're taking way more time on this pitch deck than investors normally would, because we want to break it down and offer some lessons. But we're on slide number, I think, 5. And I'll be honest, I still don't know what they do. And so all I know is that they're revolutionizing the creator economy, which, to be honest, I've heard that a number of times from a number of startups over the past several years. So, like, how are they revolutionizing it? So this is a thing. It's like trying to be direct, trying to be upfront. This is what we're going to do. It's super simple. If someone tells you they're starting a business and they're going to, like, revolutionize the lemonade industry, you can just, I'm going to make lemonade. It's going to taste better and it's cheaper. That's simple.
Yeah, my favorite thing here is the one-on-one business consulting for creators. So that is not scalable at all. So I'm immediately worried about, especially after seeing the last page, with like how many users they want to target. If they're going to have like 1 million targets users, they're going to really do one-on-one coaching for all of them. And then my favorite part of this page is the heavily emphasized no censorship with an underline. Like, that is such a strong thing to commit to. Like, we're not going to censor anything. So I don't think that's like something you should be proudly putting on your pitch deck, because you're going to like have to address that sooner or later. You can't just have no censorship at all.
That's a very hard line to draw this early on.
So, more monetized features, unlimited revenue potential for creators. If we look at the picture here, we can understand that probably these guys offer monetization not only for live streams, but also for merch, right?
That's another point that Sasha always makes. If you're gonna make yourself a competitor to all these legacy platforms like YouTube or Amazon or Twitter or whatever, you got to realize that it's so much easier for them to just create a little side project that can take you out overnight.
But the good thing here is that they have the screenshot or mock-up. I do not know still if it is a working product or not, because they did not tell it to us on previous slides, but at least the mock-up of how it will look like. So I have visualized it and start understanding what actually guys are building.
I'm going to be honest once again. I still don't have a clear idea of what they're doing. Like there's no clear definition of what they're actually doing. That's a cool photo of a band, and then I see some merch, and then the bullet points on the side. Like there's a lot of different things they're doing here. What's the primary focus? Because look, as an investor, what the calculation I'm going to make is like, do these guys have a good enough game plan to execute on all of this? What are they going to start with? What are they going to go on to next? And what are they going to go on to next? And like these bullet points on the side, those are all very, very different products and different focuses to go through. So it's just being very clear about like what we're going to do and how we're going to do it.
Let's see if the next slide answers your question. Competition slide. First of all, great job, guys, that you at least added this slide, because some companies simply forget to add a competitor slide or competitors landscape overview, and that is really annoying. We need to come back to them asking, okay, do you have competition analysis? Can you send it to us in addition to the pitch deck or whatever else? Coming back, it's very overloaded.
This is probably the best slide I've had so far, which is good. But yeah, like this kind of goes back to what I was just talking about. Like they're literally putting the best, biggest companies in the world as their competitors. So it's almost like humble brag in a way. Like, yeah, we're going to take down Disney Plus. We're going to compete with Pandora and iTunes. And it's great if you want to show features you have that they don't. But it seems like a lot of information. And as Sasha said, they still don't really say like even with all this, they don't really say how they're unique or what they're going to do differently to all these. And I always laugh at these because you always have them checks across the board. It's like it's just a really funny way to say like we do everything and nobody else does everything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe like traditionally the competitor slides, like the axes are actually the opposite way, because the way I'm reading this is like, wow, subscriptions are really killing it. They've got everything, while Web3 is just not even in the running. Poor Web3. So like, keep that in mind. Like think about like how someone might be digesting this information. I'm probably looking to go down the line and see what is checked off in a checklist versus going across the board.
Sasha, you really nailed it, because I was confused by the same thing. And I was like, okay, subscriptions, what a weird company name. This mana on the white background, it really looks like the typical titling, of the table.
That's a key takeaway here. Is you want to invest in subscriptions and you don't want to invest in fiat or Web3 tech. Don't invest in Web3 tech.
SaaS is ruling it, indeed. Early adopters.
That doesn't say a whole lot either. We have direct relationships in each category. Like that's worse than AI generated. It doesn't say anything.
Again, like be prepared to answer difficult questions if you say something like this. What would be more powerful is if you've actually created committed relationships, is maybe using logos, actual brand identifying elements that's going to help people show the real traction that you have. When I see someone like this, I see we have direct relationships in each category with nothing really mentioned. You have to understand, like an investor document like this is an accountability piece. It's showing people like, yeah, we put this on paper, like pen on paper, and we're sticking to it. It's true. Like you can't go back and change this once you share it. If I see this with like nothing of substance, I'm thinking like, yeah, right. I mean, I don't have any guarantees that they have direct relationships in each category. So maybe being specific might help here.
100% agree here. What relationship, MOUs or pre-contractual? Each category, I guess, musicians, podcasters, and influencers. How many? You said 80% of your target creators. A few slides before, you said that in 180 days, you will have 20% of your target creators in your sum, I think. Bright thing here is big words, early adopters, which definitely attracts attention, and we love when we see the early adopters. We love when we see some data there, but you don't give us any data, you don't tell us any meat. So put here logos, as Sasha suggested, or put here numbers. Like, for example, we have 10 MOUs with different musicians, podcasters, and influencers overall, with 10 million of followers and fans, and so on and so forth. So meet about your business opportunity and not just buzzwords.
Yeah,
Yeah, it seems like the slides here are like out of order almost too, because the progression, it doesn't feel like a natural progression, like of a thought process for an investor.
Early adopters following. So I guess it's about the audience of the early adopters, of musicians, of podcasters, correct?
There's definitely confusion here, and you know, if this is like early adopters, like users or like content creators, maybe you're not going to get a lot of investors paying attention to these numbers because there's no way for them to verify that these numbers could all be fabricated. The real lesson is try and demonstrate accountable figures to your audience, and so if you can back these numbers up somehow, then that's going to make the world of difference. Because the impression I'm getting here with this slide and the last slide is these are traction slides. They're trying to show investors that they have some traction, but like founders have every incentive to be dishonest about traction. So, you know, providing any sort of accountable numbers, metrics, or like commitments from, you know, B2B or clients or whatever is going to make the world of difference. Otherwise, they're just numbers on a page, and I have really no incentive to pay a lot of attention to them.
If this is a continuation of the last page where they're saying, oh, we have direct relationships with these people in three key areas, we don't know what direct relationship means. It could mean that they outreach to them and they said, hey, are you interested in testing this out or something? Maybe they had a conversation. We don't know if it went anywhere. But yeah, this might just be like, this is the audience, the aggregated audience size of all the people we've talked to, not necessarily signed on as partners. My feeling says that if they signed anybody, they would proudly display it on the pitch deck because, you know, people shamelessly put logos or names on pitch decks because that is the sort of flashy thing that appeals to most VCs or investors. So my gut says that if they don't have any names on there, then it means they don't have anything. I might be wrong, but I feel like you either got to choose a direction, like omit that altogether and admit that you don't have any traction with potential influencers or podcasters yet, or list them out there, put it out there for everybody to see, hold yourself accountable, like Sasha said. So you have to choose one of those directions. But I also don't see like what the point of putting these numbers here. Like I don't really care what the audience size is for people you may or may not be talking to. Like if you want to put more metrics, there's definitely better metrics you can put here to prove your point.
Well, actually, this could make some sense because, for example, imagine that if these guys, and we still do not know that, if these guys have some token that incentivizing creators involve their community to their platform, to ManaQI platform, and then the audience of the creators makes sense because the bigger creators you have, the more audience you can bring to your platform, hypothetically. But again, it's not me who should be guessing about it. It is you founders who should be explaining it in the pitch deck in logical storytelling. Plus, also, if these numbers make any sense, it would be much more logical to combine them all in one slide and not in two different slides. So, for example, in the left, you explain you have contractual or MOUs with 10, 15, 20 different creators, and then these creators have this target audience or whatever.
Yeah, you just reminded me as well. Like you mentioned a token, and this is literally the first. That next page is literally the first we're hearing of any token or digital asset. So it's interesting that they finally got to it here. But it kind of goes to show that I think a lot of people forget the pitch decks. You can have more than one pitch deck for one company. This feels like they're kind of trying to share what the product's about. Whereas if you're trying to sell an investor on investing in your business, you should focus it more around what they have to offer them as an investor. Like, how will you get a return on interest, or how will that asset accrue in value? So if they're waiting till this stage to get to the talk about the token and what we're theoretically going to buy as investors, that's also a bit strange, because I would want to get cut to the chase a little bit quicker there.
Finally, we have something about token. So ManaQI token is the basis for all microtransactions. So we guess that it's a transactional token. It's clear now. Brand versus token value. Brand grows, token value grows. The value of the token increases with brand growth. Second sentence makes just no sense. Sorry, guys. You can write the sky is blue and the sun is yellow with the same value added. Okay, the only thing this slide delivers is it explains us that the token is transactional.
The token's a payment barrier, and which is not a good utility to begin with. And the fact that the token is being introduced now, after we've gone through 9 slides of like a Web3 company's like a startup company, I'm not really sure what to think. I'm going to reserve judgment on this until we see if there's maybe some other token slides. Okay. And then they're giving rewards to early adopters. That's not sustainable. I want to understand a little bit more about like the revenue model and how the token might be integrated into this. I think the impression that I'm getting so far, this is a busy slide as well. But the impression I'm getting so far is that the token doesn't seem to need to be here unless there is very clearly some sort of revenue redistribution or incentive mechanism like that is sharing revenue with content creators. And that's how it's like, sort of monetizing it, or it's helping them create more monetization with the content. But yeah, this is not very clear, like what the actual utilities for the token are besides hemorrhaging rewards and payment barriers.
I also do not see here the value of the token. Founders tried to explain that the token will incentivize early adoption, but still, how incentivize?
And the slide's also titled business model, which I don't think this is a business model, at least in my mind.
Yeah, business model should explain how you are going to earn money. Leave comments under this video if you understand how this company earns money. Everyone who is watching this video, one more time elaborating. Okay, this is our first experimental format, yeah? And of course, we are doing it longer. Next time, we will do it shorter, but still, it will be uncomparable with the time average investor spends on average pitch deck received in cold, yeah, without a founder's introduction and personal presentation. In average, maximum 3 minutes. Nobody will really stick to this slide more than a few seconds trying to understand what is there. If it is not understandable from the beginning, they usually skip to the next one. Investors scrolling, if something raises attention, they stop and read. If not, they just scroll. Okay, unclear, let's go next, and so on. So investing in our next phases. I guess this is a roadmap slide.
It's very non-committal. There's no dates or any period of time associated with it. So that's also kind of a red flag for me. Like, I don't know if they're even in phase 1 yet. Hire necessary staff is kind of like, it's a non-sentence. It's like, I would hope you would hire people to run your company.
So yeah, the first question here, is it a 1-year plan or is it a 50-year plan?
Yeah, that's a good point.
And where are you now? On phase 1 or phase 4?
Oh no, they've got multiple token releases. So that's very confusing. It might be some new strategy, but it doesn't really seem like a common one that we've seen in the past, at least with just what you've outlined here, like token intro price, token release, token release, token release, and the price just keeps on going up. And so, like, I'm not really sure what that means. And again, no dates. Like, without being committal, without being specific, like this is something I would not consider investing in. I think there needs to be a lot of work, especially on this roadmap, because yeah, I mean this pitch deck hasn't really clearly still explained what they're doing, and then this roadmap doesn't explain how they're going to do it. I think there needs to be a lot of work here.
Founding team. Oh my God. Again, guys, what can investor understand from this slide? Investor can understand that you have 6 guys in the founding team, and that's it. We do not know about their experience, expertise, achievements, professionalism, nothing.
Yeah, you can say all I can see here is that it's a diverse team, so people from different countries. So that's is cool. Like I like little teams. But yeah, you're right. There's nothing like I can't even click on a link or anything. I don't know who these people are. And investors hate doing research. Like they like it everything laid out in front of them. So if there's not a link to click on, then you have to manually go to Google or look up people on LinkedIn, which more often than not, people are not going to do that unless you've already enticed them. But if you've lost interest already, then you know this is the death blow. You're not going to get past this.
This is a good point. Like, it's every slide is an opportunity to explain some strong point in a clear, concise way to try and help the audience understand what you're doing and how you're going to do it and why you're going to do it and how you're going to do it and like, what tools you have to do it. So that's really the biggest takeaway here is like put yourself in the audience member's shoe.
And Adaya, as a founder, I guess you will be watching and you were building this deck. So open pitch deck templates on InnMind knowledge base and look what advice is there. Yeah, this is not enough to put your names and titles. It's crazily important, at least one sentence of your core expertise. Did you have any exits previously? Did you have any successful projects previously? This is the core information. And as Carmela and Sasha said, you make it even more complicated for investors, not even linking to your LinkedIn profiles. Good practice is adding information and also LinkedIn profiles links. Going next, our ask.
Never heard of seed A funding before. I wonder if there's going to be a seed B. Oh, there is a seed B. It's right there.
If you want to make some segmentation, at least stick to what VCs know about. Yeah, pre-seed, seed, Series A, A plus, B, or bridge round.
Going along with what you're saying, Nelly, like, you're right. It's important to understand what investors are used to because the first impression here of seed A and seed B raising $5.5 million for this platform, like I'm sorry, I'm not really sure what the product's going to look like, what it's going to do first and foremost, how you're going to do it. But $5.5 million, like, I don't know if that's appropriate or not. But what I do know now is that maybe there's like private A, private B, private C. Like, are there going to be 7 more funding rounds if there's a seed A and seed B? Like, how many seed rounds are there? The purpose of the seed round is for an investor to understand, like, this is the earliest or one of the earliest rounds to bootstrap this and then maybe take it to like 1 or 2 additional rounds of funding before maybe going public. And so, yeah, I'm not sure what seed A, seed B means. Is there seed C or D as well? So this is the confusing aspect. Like, how diluted is my share going to be?
And also, from one side, it is good to see 5-year projection because many startups don't even bother themselves with doing any financial projections. But at the same time, it's also confusing. You put gross revenue and you create impression that in 5-year times you will have 95K revenue.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Is it 95 million in 5 years? Is it 95 billion if we trust your market opportunity size? So what is it? Because in 180 days, again, I can't forget this slide. In 180 days, you want to have 20% of market share.
Yeah, that was my first thought here. I saw, okay, wow, 100 million revenue in 2027. I was like, that's too much. And then I was like, wow, actually, it could be $99,000. That's a horrible 5-year forecast. So it has to be somewhere between those two numbers, and I'm not sure which one it is. And also the graphic on the bottom left, like typically you see like a distribution of like where, how much fundraising will be done and how much will be going to the investors, like private public rounds, and what the tokens will be used for. But this is strictly like where they're going to put that 5.5 million in investment. So it doesn't really tell you a whole lot about how much equity they plan on selling, and like Sasha said, the different rounds or the vesting schedules or anything like that. So it feels like to me that they haven't even really considered what they want the fundraising to look like. So
I think like we're not even really sure if they're raising against a token or equity. A lot of these things on the investment graphic on the left, like I don't know if that's a token distribution or if that's an allocation of funds. That's the lesson, I guess, just making sure it's clear. No one should be looking at a chart like this and guessing if you're going to raise for equity and or tokens. That's I would say not a job well done on describing the value proposition and what you are selling.
Yeah, I suggest that maybe we summarize here what is the core problem in this deck overall, and as an investor, why you will not follow up with the founder after receiving this deck, either on InnMind platform or if the founder sends it to you by email. What is missing here for you to want to talk with the founder and jump on the first introductory call?
there's a lot missing, but I guess Sasha mentioned in the beginning, I think all three of us mentioned it, we aren't afforded the luxury of time to spend this much time while looking at pitch decks. So I'll be honest, a lot of pitch decks, I'm out by the second, third page, and you can tell quite quickly, depending on what kind of investor you are, what your red flags and green flags are. So like, I don't even think I would get to the slides that I would have questions about. So I wouldn't get to the end and be left wanting for information. But yeah, there's a lot that I need to know about, like obviously the business model and like Sasha said, the what's being bought. It also seems like they're not so accessible. Like I don't know if the people are real people, to be honest. Like I know that sounds dramatic, but they can be artificial intelligence generated people with fake names. We've seen some scammers doing stuff like that before, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. And I want to feel like I can find information on people. Like it's crazy to ask for $5.5 million without any information about yourself. Like imagine that. Like that is the craziness of Web3 in a nutshell. Like asking for $5 million and not revealing anything about what you want that money for or who you are. And I feel bad, being so critical of these guys. Like I know they put their heart and soul into this probably, and I hope that this information serves them well, and they're paying attention. And maybe this can help them, and they can create an amazing pitch deck.
That is a great feedback, Carmelo. Sasha?
I agree with everything that he said here. Like I'm out by slide 2 or slide 3. Like formatting, styling aside, it's just being able to have the skills or the experience to clearly communicate what you're doing to an investor. And like it's just that weird cliche of the elevator pitch. Like if you could talk about what you're doing in like 2 or 3 sentences to somebody and do it and like help them understand exactly what you're doing, then I think you've succeeded. And I haven't seen that here. So like, stating not the problem so much, but just what you guys are building, the solution, being clear and holding yourselves accountable when it comes to certain metrics and traction. And then, making sure that the value proposition and the sale or the offering is clear, because I'm just confused through this whole thing. I'm sorry to say it's been kind of painful, like to see this. And as an investor, I would never have gotten to the end here, but I'm hoping that we can provide some feedback that's going to help people understand like what they can do to improve their pitch decks and what hopefully this team can do to improve their pitch deck. I think there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, one little advice nugget too. Like it's not necessarily about like this is bad or not good. You know, this is a very competitive niche within an already competitive industry. So you're not just going to get up against yourself. It's not a yes or no, will you or will you not invest? Like there are so many people, as we mentioned, building similar platforms to this. You're competing against all of them. And I thought it was funny they didn't put any Web3 platforms on their competitor analysis. It was just Disney Plus, Hulu, all these ones that are kind of unobtainable and unrealistic. But yeah, you got to compete for attention. And if I'm seeing the same version of this pitch deck 5 times a week, I'm probably not even going to be past the second slide because I have fatigue at this point. So you're competing against those people. You really need to do something original, and you have to be if you're a CEO, you have to be a good saleswoman or salesman. Like Sasha said, the good elevator pitch. You need to capture my attention because there's a high likelihood that I will dip out after the second or third slide.
For the founders of ManaQI, again, excuse me if I pronounce it in the wrong way, it was not the point to get you offended or to criticize your deck. The point was to explain you clearly and transparently how investors think and talk and digest your information while looking at it one-to-one from their computer, etc. In 99% of cases, when you send the deck to investor and investor does not like the deck, and because of all these reasons that we mentioned, you will never know about that. Investors do not have a habit and do not have time and do not have resources to give detailed feedback to every founder about being unprepared, about wrongly designed and wrongly built in pitch deck, and so on and so forth. So I hope really that you find it insightful and you have now a lot of meat to do your homework, to think about, and to rebuild it from scratch. Coming back to the sense of this deck, at the last slide, you mentioned that you spent 1.2 million on bootstrapping this company. I guess the result of this 1.2 million should be at least some MVP or product. It should be some audience, some traction, at least early traction. But we do not know anything about it from your deck. Your deck does not give us any information about the scope of your business, the real substance behind what have you achieved so far. So nothing about traction as well. No idea on how you plan to go to the market, no idea of in what stage of the development you are today. It is very, very wordy, but at the same time, blind pitch deck, empty pitch deck that does not give any meat to investor. So you should reconsider rebuilding it from scratch. If you have any questions or comments, leave the comments below this video. And few more things. If you want your pitch deck to be reviewed, go to InnMind, click the button in your startup profile, review my pitch deck. And if you want to have more advice from Arcanum Ventures, we will leave all the links under this video in the description. And you can contact guys in Twitter, in email, website, etc., and get in touch with them to ask them to advise on your deck. So yeah, thank you for today, and we will continue our experiments soon.
Yeah, just to end on a positive note, just so we don't scare everybody away from ever doing this video ever again. One of the greenest green flags is the fact that these guys actually put themselves under the microscope. So kudos to them for that, at least. Like, having that ability to take feedback and want that feedback, that's big in Web3, because a lot of people have big egos and they don't think they know everything. So respect them for that.
Yeah, kudos for transparency and for sharing lessons.
Fully agree with you. Brave guys, a brave team, and thanks a lot for applying to review your pitch deck. Hope you found it insightful. Thank you.